Greetings, EELE 487 students. Getting down toward the end of the semester now, and I hope the semester has been going well for you in all of your other classes. I've been enjoying reading your comments and discussion online, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. It's been very interesting to see what all of you have to say and the kinds of things that are concerns that you might have. This week, for our online discussion, I'd like to talk about and have you discuss online some questions that have to do with the concepts of privacy and security and confidentiality that go along with our contemporary work with digital systems. There was a time when you probably expected that if somebody said, I want to have privacy, or I want to have good security of my private information, you might be thinking about having a padlock on a file cabinet, or a secure door that is closed, or some sort of secret place in your home or in your office where you would hide an envelope with some private information in it, so you'd have this physical ability to protect things. Of course, nowadays we all know that a lot of our information isn't stored in a physical place like that. It's stored in the cloud, or it's stored out in digital form that can be more easily copied, and it's a little harder to secure. And so we have to think a lot more these days about how do we apply our concepts of privacy and security and confidentiality in the things that we do. And as engineers, one of the questions then comes up, if we're working on developing new techniques for sharing information or moving things around, do we have to be particularly worried? Are we obligated to know more about privacy and security concerns so that we can inform the public and make sure that those considerations are put into place? And that it's a very good question, and one that in your careers I'm sure you'll be dealing with a lot. So I guess the first thing we might want to do is to define a few terms. So I've used this term privacy a few times, and privacy to me, I think, and maybe the official definition might be certain things that you have about your information and about your way of life and about the things that you do that you don't want to have other people having to pry into. You want to be able to keep these things in some way secret, or at least have control over them. There's certain activities that you might engage in that you consider private. Things that you would do on your own or with a select group of people that you don't want everybody else to have access to. Even things like your birth date, or the size of your shoes, or what type of restaurants you go to eat at, those sorts of things, which may be seeming relatively trivial, but they're private things. You really don't want somebody prying into those parts of your life without your agreement. Avoiding those types of intrusion is something that we put in the category of privacy. Now, you are probably also familiar with the idea of confidentiality. So if you have confidential agreements with somebody not to divulge information or not to violate this assumption of privacy that you might have, that falls into this area of confidentiality. So if you come and talk to an office or a particular individual, you may have either a written contract that says that you will not disclose the information, or that it's confidential, or there may be an assumption like that. For instance, if you're talking to a physician or a counselor or a member of the clergy, something like that. The other term that we probably want to think about is this notion of security. And often privacy and security go hand in hand, but to me, I think when we talk about security, those are sort of the technical and physical measures that we put into place to prevent unauthorized access to information. And in the context of private information, security there means that there are measures in place to prevent people from getting at those things that you might want to consider private. Now, let's look at an example you're all familiar with as students, which is the information that you have at the university as far as your grades and academic records and things like that. you have an expectation of privacy of many of those records. You don't want necessarily unauthorized people to see your transcript or to get at that sort of information. It's sort of none of their business, and then it's just a sense of privacy that you have about it. What's more, we have the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, which is a law that says that educational institutions like Montana State that accept federal money have to protect the privacy of families, and that's parents with children. And then once you turn 18, or once you become enrolled into college, you yourself take on that rights and privileges to protect your own privacy and assume that the university will do the same. Now, it isn't absolute, because FERPA does allow the university to have directory information. So at MSU, for instance, they have information that they do not consider private, such as your name, your major, what type of level at school are you a freshman, sophomore, and so forth, and a bunch of other information. And so you can look at the university's website and see what the university considers directory information. You can also put in a special request for them not to release some of that information, but that requires a special action on your part. Now, the university assumes that people like me, faculty members, will keep information confidential. Now, I have the ability as an academic advisor to look at students' grades and records and what courses they're enrolled in and what ACT score they got and things like that. But the assumption of the confidentiality is I am looking at that information only for the purposes of assisting you as my advisee with your academic career. I'm not divulging that information to employers. I'm not trolling through the files of the university looking at students' files for no reasons other than curiosity. That's not a legitimate reason. So the confidentiality of this work says that we're going to maintain your privacy of those records. We also have security associated with the university and your academic records. Anything that's on paper is locked in an office. It's put in a file cabinet with a lock and key, so it can't be inadvertently or deliberately accessed. And certainly the electronic access security nowadays is becoming more and more important. So we have special passwords, network security measures, things like that are put in place to avoid the ability of somebody to break that security and get access to this confidential information or invade your privacy in that way. Now, for the reading discussion this week, what I would like you to do is think about a particular aspect of this confidentiality and security, and that is what happens when you install a new piece of software or get a new app for your phone. Often there's one step in that process where a little screen will pop up and say, in order to use this product, you have to agree to our licensing agreement or our confidentiality agreement, or you have to acknowledge that you've read the policies that go with the use of this product. Often, if you look at that document that you are agreeing to, it's many, many pages long, and I would venture to bet that essentially nobody ever reads that whole document, that whole license agreement or that whole confidentiality agreement. And why don't we? Because it's long, and it's the information at the time that we're wanting to use this product seems like it's just one step in the way of getting us through that. But the question then is, if we have clicked on that button to say, yes, I agree to these terms, but we haven't actually read them, is it really legitimate for that company and the courts and whatever to hold us liable for that? I mean, if this is something that is basically arcane legal language and nobody approximately is actually reading it, is it really legitimate to say that that's a valid agreement that you've clicked on? The question then is, well, if not, what should we have? What is the right way to inform us about that informed consent about using this software and so forth. So when we maybe get a Gmail account with Google, or we're using Google Drive and uploading a lot of our personal documents onto Google, the license agreement essentially allows Google to look through all of those files and read all of our emails. Now, probably a human being is not doing that, but practically speaking, they now have access to all that information. And if you trust Google and you like the benefits of having this cloud storage of information, maybe that's a good trade-off. But if you are worried about confidentiality and perhaps about some of your private information being made available to people you might not otherwise have agreed to, what recourse do you have, or what options do you have? Okay, so go to the D2L site. You can read my prompt there, and I really look forward to reading and having your classmates also read and respond to the comments there on the D2L site. And I appreciate your effort. Thank you.